Support proplaygames on Patreon.
So hey guys, we are back now for game 2. And in this game, I've learned a lot more about how the matchup works out. So you're going to see the game actually play out very different from the first game. And you're going to see some different key cards, come into play because of that. And I'm going to highlight them when they come down. But essentially, this is basically me learning the basics of the game, how the control matchup specifically works, because the control matchup is pretty difficult if played improperly, and definitely less difficult if played properly, but still not one of the easiest decks. Obviously purple being one of the most competitive decks in the format for battle spirits, it's a difficult task, and George being an excellent pilot, we saw a lot of good decisions from him in game 1. So right now what I'm deciding is I'm basically not going to attack until I'm ready to go all in, which is one thing that I learned from game 1, because I don't want to give George any cores that he can use to his advantage. And at the same time, I'm trying to get my more heavy hitting cards like Tyrannorax, and so I want to set up for something like that. So at the same time, drawing 4 would also be pretty good. So those are the kinds of cards I want to see in my bunny hand. Again, because red is kind of like this sleight of hand, go all in as early as possible strategy, you want to limit mulliganing as much as possible. So that's why you see in deck construction I actually play 4 of most of my cards, because I don't want to mulligan. So here I actually start by playing the lizard, and then I remember the spider that George plays in game 1. So this is me adapting a little bit of my strategy and playing a card that has only a 2 core requirement. So in my mind, this is pretty decent of an opening. I would have liked to see Scorching Battlefield a little bit more, just to have something that can't be interacted with as easily, but I don't have that available to me right now. So I actually get a charge out, which is pretty good. And here I actually see that because of the 2 upkeep cost to have my lizard in play and not having it exposed to any of the cards that George can play in his turn, I actually also can't play the lizard this turn either. So I'm starting to learn here at this point, and what's going through my mind is basically, because every creature that I play needs at least 2 cores to survive, I actually get taxed for every card that I put into play. So instead, what I'm doing here is drawing to draw as many 0 cost red cards as I can, and just try to go for an OTK turn, like I've been saying before. But at the same time, this is why something like Scorched Battlefield would be really good, because Scorch would give me a reduction on all my cards without actually needing 2 cores to survive turns. So you'll see here I go for Grizzly. I actually mistap. I think I have, oh no, yeah, so 2 and 2, so it's good. So now I have 2 eligible attackers, and they both have 2 cores, but I'm trying to play around Beldegor as much as possible. It's actually one of the key cards in the matchup. And this field that George played, the Cathedral, is going to be instrumental in his gameplay here, because I now can't get in for at least 1 chip because he'll draw an extra card. So I'm going to try and whittle down his board a little bit. In hindsight, attacking here was a little difficult, but I found myself in a difficult position, because if I keep prolonging the game, I at least at first believed that I had a little bit less of a chance of winning in the late game, but at the same time I should have just been as patient as possible. It's just the nature of the matchup. You just have to wait a long time before trying to go for game. Ideally, you'd want him to block twice with these little horse dudes, so that the soul core draw effect only applies to one of them. So that's the one thing that I learned. I mistakenly at some point here I'm going to start attacking, and he gets additional value from his field and his horse creature. So just an overall learning moment there. at the same time, this is, you know, something of a debate because just giving purple too much time is not good. So those are all the things that are going to my mind right now. So at the moment that he draws 2 here and only loses 1 card on his board, you know, I realize maybe it's not that great of an attack. But since I'm already all inning, I go in with my other lizard as well. And now that he's drawn 3 extra cards, he has more than enough fuel to go ahead and draw something like a Burning Force here. So we didn't see it in game 1, but it actually hurts a little bit more than what I would like because normally my lizard is 6k if there's only 2 cards in play, but because I have 3, it can get hit by Burning Force. So now I basically applied no pressure and George drew 3 extra cards. So the game is in a terrible state from here. And this is just a consequence of, you know, me learning that I just have to play as slow as possible, or as slow as the purple deck allows, you know, and not be afraid to go into the game with the red aggressive deck. We'll actually see here that I tried to mount a little bit of a comeback with the cards available in my hand, and now I'm kicking myself a little bit because if I had at least 1 or 2 of the creatures that I had the turn prior, my turn would have actually been incredibly more explosive. So definitely wish I could get those back. Maybe in a fictional game 3. No, but here Tyrannorex, in my mind at least, feels like one of the only outs that I have in the game. And this is something that red is actually really good at. Once it gets board wiped, it actually has a lot of resources available to it. So rebuilding is pretty easy for this kind of red deck. So this is something that I really like, having so many 0 cost cards. So right now I just try to go tall, spend the turn slowing down a little bit, just filling my board with symbols that I can have for cost reduction. Here I debate whether it's better to put it on the field or the creature, but it's always better to put in the creature. There's no point in putting in the field if you're not going to attack. So now George, feeling in a commanding position, he just wants to use his resources to the best of his ability. And that includes not wasting any removal on something like this eagle. He'll wait for something larger. So instead he'll use his cores to play another creature draw, and here I get a little bit of a refill, and you can see a little bit of a head tilt from George. He knows that card definitely gets me back into the game. So he goes ahead and attacks for a little bit of chip. Same as in game 1, he figured that chipping in once every turn wasn't that detrimental for him because he can end the game at any point. So a good attack on George's part. There was an argument here, and we talk about it later, to actually attack with one of the creatures that didn't have the soul core on it, because this soul core represents him drawing an extra card with that block. But at the same time, it's also an attack with curse, so there's a give and take there. So now, effectively, we go back to same as in game 1. I recognize that this might be one of the last turns where I have sort of a, not momentum because George has more cards in play right now, but at least a possibility of lethaling, even from this spot. So this is just a consequence of at least how I like to build the red deck. You're gonna see a torrent of cards go into play this turn, and here I have a lot of available 1-drops, but I want to make sure that all my cards actually combo with Gigantorex. And it just feels pretty good not paying anything for cards. 0 cost cards are some of my favorites. So here he actually lets me know that it's base level 3 because all my cards are Emperor Beasts or Tyrannoids. So that's actually, I didn't even know that card was that good, and it just keeps getting better. So instead of the cores on the creature. I end up putting them on the mountain. And my reasoning here is essentially, if I get chip damage in, I get a little bit of value. It is a value grind game after all. So we have a little bit of a talk about how good Gigantamax is for a second, and then we go into combat. And George actually does quite cool plays here, so I think that I am making a comeback into the game, but because of, again, the Cathedral Field drawing him so many cards, he's actually going to make a little bit of a combo removal play, and it's actually quite exciting here. So he's gonna start by forcing me to sack a dude, and then the Soul Core that attacked actually still got him to draw a card by being sacrificed, so that was a good heads up play for me, attacking with Curse and then drawing on defense, and then forcing out. He knew that I was going to attack with Gigantamax first, and I don't want to sack Gigantamax, so he actually gets rid of an eligible attacker by doing that, so it's a very good timing on the deadly balance. And then here he's going to combo it by core thefting. And it's gonna be, oh, so he debates it for a second, but he should certainly do it just to get, you know, the threat out of the table. It's essentially almost free, and then the cards that he discards are just extra cards that he's drawing during this combat, so it costs him almost nothing. And there is the backbreaking card for me, and the reason why getting to cycle through so many cards is, you know, so great in purple. Beldegor comes down, and now I just have no eligible attackers, because if I go into battle with any of these two eagles, they're just gonna get Beldegor for free. So tragically, I just have to look at Beldegor and discard and say pass. So he's telling me here how he mitigated my attacks expertly, and I agree with him. He did do a pretty good job at stopping at least one of my Gigantamax turns. And that's what you have to do. If the red deck decides to go a little bit slower and try to build up, just chip away at their board slowly, and at the same time have a plan for the Gigantamax turn. So George obviously did all of those things. Not having a way to remove his field was pretty difficult to overcome for me. So George just making sure he covers all his bases. At 5 life, he actually ended up telling me after the game that because he was at 5, he didn't mind making the game this sort of like a racing situation because he was so ahead in life. So having a hunch that I actually don't play any ice blocks, and he himself having an ice block, he didn't mind trying to go for game this turn. And it will be pretty effective here. He's just debating on how many cards to commit on the offensive, because again, you know, there could always be some sort of lethal opportunities if he's not careful. So he plays that Purple Emperor. This is a very underutilized card, but a very powerful card as well. Just basically destroying anything when it swings. Kind of like a souped up version of the Spider card. Just confirming how big this is. Can't make any effective blocks, I just have to go ahead and take this. I'm debating using my Angelic Pressure in combination with my Eagle to try to take it down, but at the same time I'm just so low on life that I tell myself not to. And then he clarifies here that I don't actually have a window. I have to do it beforehand, which is fine. We go ahead and resolve it that way. So the timing windows in this game are very particular, And it takes a little bit of time to learn, you know, the nuance, but once you do, it's pretty intuitive. So here he didn't overcommit with the last attack. And this is for sure my last turn, as I am low on life. So he's just teaching me a little bit about the last few turns. It's been very exciting learning these past two games, just so much information on one matchup. I feel like the red deck is a great deck to play if you're just getting started at Battle Spirits in general and in card games. Just learning aggro decks, you know, gives you a lot of perspective on giving you win conditions, playing to your outs, just in general, overall combat math of the game. So a lot of good benefits from playing something like the red deck in Battle Spirits. And if you're a control player at heart, now you have a good basis from what George has been doing here. So my favorite kind of play, presenting lethal from only one card in play. It's actually so satisfying playing these go wide kind of strategies. So here I'm just letting you know, I could have used something like a Burning Force. Definitely in a post board scenario where you know, get access to it in the sideboard, it would be very useful against purple in particular. So that's one other thing that I learned. But that being said, we try to go for game here. So essentially in my mind, I'm basically saying, okay, if you don't have Ice Block, I'll go for game, and that's about it. Plays Beldegor. Beldegor been exceptional the entire time, stopping these mid-turn lethals. Just being able to get an extra blocker and forcing that extra attack to draw an extra card with the field. It's just overall a good synergy. So here he's gonna take just enough to be able to Ice Shield me, and then once he does that, the game will be effectively over. Because now I can anticipate some sort of a combo that'll destroy my field on the way back. So we'll see him do it here. Just put him on better habit, but he's drawing a fourth of his deck, so can be almost assured at this point. Even if he doesn't do something like a large combo, he could just play a few cards that get rid of my only eligible blockers and try to go for lethal that way. So there's just a lot of ways to end the game. And then there you go. There's Inferno Dragon, and it's going to clear my board, and just that'll be it. So there you go, guys. That's a good 2 exhibition games on the red versus purple matchup. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys like this type of content and want to see more Battle Spirits or any other type of Bandai games, just go ahead and feel free to join the proplaygames Patreon for a lot more content. But for now, I will say peace.